This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, new details about the tragic death of a Nova Scotia firefighter killed 5 years ago. Claim dismissed. A senior citizen asked for ceiling repairs at her apartment building. Why the tenancy board turned her down. What's growing in the garden? We check in on efforts to get more young Black Nova Scotians growing food.
Isolated showers and thunderstorms ending this evening. We're quiet to start Friday with a few more isolated showers and storms throughout the day. And then tracking Ernesto for early next week. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. The family of Skylar Blackie is sharing new details they learned this week about the firefighter's tragic death 5 years ago at the Nova Scotia Firefighter School. The 28-year-old was using an expired fire extinguisher when it exploded on him. Turns out he alerted instructors the extinguisher was rusty right before he died. Angela McIver has the details.
Skylar Blackie knew how to use a fire extinguisher. He was a full-time employee with Truro Fire Service for 5 years. On the day of the fatal accident, he was undergoing a Level 1 certification exam at the firefighter school in Waverley. His brother Arison, also a firefighter, was there too.
We heard the explosion. We heard a staff member call for medical, in which case I ran over to Skylar. I came to find him on the ground with his mask shattered and bloody. Took off his mask with other staff members at the Nova Scotia Firefighter School, in which case we saw Skylar was breathing and identified that he was my brother.
Skylar Blackie died in hospital 11 days later. His family has known for years the exploding extinguisher was well past expiry and had been donated by Imperial Oil. But until this week, the family was not aware Blackie himself identified that day there was rust on the extinguisher and was told by the instructor it was all right to use.
I think it speaks to Skylar and just his cognizance of safety, and it's really disheartening that the instructor just passed it off as fine.
These new details come just days after the Blackie family went public with their calls to shut down the school, at least until major safety concerns are addressed.
I think it needs a change in leadership and would be the initial steps, and then moving, more into the future is sitting down with government officials and MLAs and seeing how we can make Nova Scotia's legislation stronger for firefighter training safety.
A recent third-party review of the training facility identified 41 safety recommendations. The province says it has noted 22 high-risk activities in that report, but has not disclosed details. The Blackie family says they will continue to push for accountability to protect all firefighters and honor Skylar.
Shouldn't have happened. There's no excuse. What are we doing here? Let's get the job done. Let's do it right. Let's do it safe so everyone gets to go home.
Angela McIver, CBC News, Windsor Junction.
The family of a boy who died during flash flooding in West Hants in July of last year is suing the province for negligence. Tara Sisko, the mother of 6-year-old Colton Sisko, is named as the lead plaintiff against the provincial government and West Hants Regional Municipality. In a written statement, Sisko says she hopes the legal action will allow her to pursue answers on what happened. Colton and 6-year-old Natalie Harnish were swept away in a truck when trying to flee the floodwaters. Both died. Colton's mother alleges that the municipality and province failed to send an emergency alert in a reasonable time frame. The lawsuit doesn't specify the amount of financial compensation sought. A New Glasgow senior is speaking out after a tenancy officer dismissed her claim for repairs to her building's cracked and leaky ceiling. The damage is in the building's hallway, and the officer said the tenancy board has no authority over common areas. But as Nicholas Seguin reports, this may not be true.
For more than a year, Joan Underwood has walked past this crack, worrying about what could come of it.
I kept thinking, one of these days, that will all collapse.
Her landlord told her the ceiling is sound and doesn't need repairs, but Underwood has seen buckets of murky brown water below the crack, and at one point a pole appeared to be holding up the ceiling. She was sick of it.
Something's got to be done, because right now, nothing's being done.
Underwood gathered her evidence and filed a claim with Nova Scotia's Tenancy Board. She didn't ask for money, just repairs. But her claim was dismissed, the officer saying the Tenancy Board doesn't have authority to order repairs in common areas, a decision that this lawyer says is wrong.
It really just doesn't make any sense logically, and not surprisingly, it doesn't accord with the law. The law is very clear that a landlord is responsible for maintaining standards of safety and health in common areas.
Calderhead says by this logic, the Tenancy Board wouldn't be able to order repairs in stairwells, elevators, and parking garages, which he calls appalling. But the director of residential tenancies says this isn't actually a policy.
Each residential tenancy officer is an independent decision maker. However, it's not necessarily a policy of the program to not address common areas, but each hearing is different.
But since CBC News asked about this case, it appears the department has intervened. Underwood's daughter said she got a call from an official yesterday advising her mother to appeal the decision or file a new claim. Underwood is considering it, hoping to see the ceiling repaired in her lifetime. Nicholas Sagan, CBC News, New Glasgow.
Work is continuing on a new homeless encampment in Dartmouth. It's located on city land at the corner of Bancroft Lane and Marketplace Drive on Wrights Cove. Municipal staff say it should be ready in the coming weeks, and then people can start moving in. They have not yet decided how many tents will be there. Nearby residents and business owners brought concerns to a community meeting Wednesday. They called for 24-hour security and plans to keep the area safe. Councillor Tony Mancini promised to look at security and meet with Halifax Police about a patrol plan.
There are aspects of the homeless crisis that we're having that is in fact better because we have staff and resources and we've been educated and there's lessons learned. But it's getting worse and the numbers are getting higher. Our director of housing and homelessness told us it's going to get worse. And if we don't manage these encampments, we don't designate more encampments, we're going to have tents and every bit of municipal green space that's available. And without management, that's not a good situation to be in.
The Bancroft site is close to transit and will have water, toilet, and garbage facilities. There will also be a new after-hours team of city staff who can respond to issues. The union that represents 5,000 school support workers in Nova Scotia says more needs to be done to try to curb violence in the classroom and on buses. CUPE has launched a campaign today aimed at winning support for its demands for more staff and better training for those on the job. Nelson Scott is a custodian at an elementary school in Cape Breton. He says during his 20 years on the job, the level of violence and the severity of attacks against support staff has grown.
Some violent, really violent children that are really abusing their TAs. Just an instance like a TA was standing there one day and not even interacting with the child. She was talking to another TA and the child was come up and slapped her right across the breast and puck in the face. I've seen that on multiple occasions.
CUPE says the provincial government has promised a new school code of conduct, but the union hasn't heard anything about that since the end of the last school year in June. Ryan Snoddon with us now to talk weather. I know I woke up this morning wondering where Ernesto was. I'm sure you did as well.
First thing I looked at on the phone. Let's have a look at the latest model tracks. And yeah, the good news is that that trend has been our friend over the last couple of days here. We've been trending towards the south and east. This is a strong storm now rolling to the north. And Category 1 will likely become a 2 as it impacts Bermuda this weekend. Continuing to track north still as a Category 1 into our waters Sunday night and into Monday. And throughout Monday, it will track most likely to our south and east. That cone of uncertainty still edging towards eastern parts of Cape Breton. But again, the bulk of the guidance keeping that storm either near or to the south of Sable Island. And we'll show you here all the different forecast model tracks. And again, the center of the storm This is where all of these models are projecting the center of the storm will be. That's key, but also a key part of the story is that this is going to be a big storm. So if it is closer to Sable or between Sable and Nova Scotia, we would see some impacts here in the form of rain. But this offshore track is making it more and more likely that the wind element is not going to be impactful here for us with those strongest winds near the center and to the right of that storm. But again, the devil in the details here. So even if the track is near Sable, this is just one particular model, but you can see those heavier, some of those outer rain bands tracking into Nova Scotia. The heaviest rain would remain offshore, but we could get into some of that wet weather for Sunday night, but more so throughout the day on Monday. So we'll be honing in on that over the next few days. The one thing we are expecting here, a big push of water coming up with this storm and some high certainly sea levels and pounding waves moving into the province as early as Sunday. And if you're going to be beach going on Sunday, be mindful that the potential for rip currents occurring as early as Sunday, but especially on Monday when we'll be looking at that pounding surf moving in and along the Atlantic coastline as this storm does track through. Tom, it would take a significant shift in the track for this thing to have significant impacts in Nova Scotia. But again, some impacts here in terms of some of those outer rain bands. That is what we'll kind of drill into here over the next few days, and more on this and of course your 7-day coming up.
Yeah, really appreciate those insights. So thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
A recent United Nations report called Canada's temporary foreign worker program a breeding ground for modern slavery. It comes as the federal government looks at reforming the program, which a professor of social work at Dalhousie University says is flawed in Nova Scotia as well.
By far, the worst conditions are within the seafood processing plants. And I think for the agricultural workers, the main issue, especially here in Nova Scotia, is that there are certain regulations that are outlined by the federal program, but they're not necessarily implemented when it comes to the employers.
I'll talk to Raluca Béchon about her research and what changes she wants to see to protect temporary foreign workers here. She is our Newsmaker interview today, just after 6:30. The ferry that travels between Nova Scotia and PEI is back on the water after almost a full day out of service. Northumberland Ferries says the MV Sarima's uninterruptible power supply failed, which affected the ship's navigation equipment. Repairs were made overnight. The spokesperson says it had to cancel the Sarima's early crossings today because it was being certified as safe to sail. Today is National Acadian Day, or Akeenzu, and thousands of people are in southwest Nova Scotia to mark the occasion. The World Acadian Congress is a 9-day celebration of Acadian culture and heritage, but tonight is the big night, with a huge outdoor concert planned on the tarmac at the Yarmouth Airport. It's held every 5 years, but the Congress was last held in Nova Scotia 2 decades ago in 2004. It's the largest gathering of people of Acadian ancestry in the world. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in southwestern Nova Scotia today and is expected to speak at the concert tonight. Today is also the 78th anniversary of India's independence from the United Kingdom. The Indo-Canadian Association of Nova Scotia will be celebrating India's Independence Day on Saturday with an event at Dalhousie University. Vern Ramasar spoke with the association's president to find out more.
We're here outside the Student Union building of Dalhousie in Halifax, and with me is Valimati Kalipurimal, who is the president of the Indo-Canadian Association of Nova Scotia. Thank you for being with us, Valimati.
Thank you for inviting us.
Now, this Saturday afternoon at the McInnes Room, right in this building here, you'll be hosting the Indian Independence Day celebrations, and it's obviously a big deal for the Indian community, independence. Tell me what it means to the Indian community worldwide.
The Indian community worldwide actually feels India is one of the famous world democracy, and the Indian community in Canada actually has grown tremendously in the past years. And in 2021, according to the 2021 census, 1 in 5 Canadians are Indians. So the Indian community has brought in like a lot of economic growth to the community in terms of various sectors and workforces around the different sectors in Canada.
Yeah. So talk to me about this Saturday. What's the event going to include? It's about 2.5 hours, I believe.
Yes.
You've got some very important guests coming too.
Yes, we have a tremendous celebration happening this Saturday. So basically we have different guests, important guests, like the acting U.S. Consul is our chief of guests for the event, and we have MPs and MLAs and dignitaries attending the event.
And of course, as we stand here speaking, it is in fact the actual Indian Independence Anniversary, the
78th Indian Independence Day, and Happy Independence Day to all.
And how India has changed over those 78 years as well.
Yes, yeah.
Now, your association was formed in 1964. Presumably in that time, the Indian population here in Nova Scotia has grown tremendously, I would imagine. How important is it right now in terms of size, and how has your association been able to sort of meet the needs of your members?
Yeah, so as you said, like our association was formed in 1964, and this year marks the 60th anniversary of the association. And the association started with like immigrants who moved from India, who came here to work as like professors, doctors, teachers, and they wanted the need to form an association to promote the culture and also to foster the Indo-Canadian friendship. As of now, as you can imagine, the Indian community is one of the biggest community in Nova Scotia, and we as an association, we try to develop the relationship better between the Indo and Canadians, and also help out all the Indian community people in terms of assisting newcomers, and also communicating with like different organizations in terms of like what are the essential needs of the community and how it can be like tackled as a wholesome community together.
Valamarthi, thank you very much for speaking with us today, and a very happy Indian Independence to you.
Thank you so much for having us today as well. Thank you.
Corn, kale, and watermelon. Those are just a few of the things kids are pulling out of the ground this week at Dalhousie University's agricultural campus in Truro. That's because it's harvest time for the Culture of Growing initiative. The program's goal is to get more young Black Nova Scotians growing food. Last year, we heard from some of the people involved. Information Morning's Felicia Chandler went back for a visit to see how it's all going.
My name's Kaylor, and I'm the Provincial Program Manager of the Culture of Growing program. We focus on historic Black communities that have students that may lack access to certain programming in Truro, North Preston, Sydney, Digby, and in those sites we have weekly sessions where our students engage in learning about different things like hydroponics, agriculture, plant care, and everything under the bracket of agriculture. And we also focus on giving our students access to different careers within agriculture that they may not have necessarily known before, with the hopes to, again, increase that representation, have more Black youth that are excited about agriculture and all the possibilities that are contained within.
At any age, you can really farm. And I just like this program because it gives an opportunity to people that don't know this aspect or area. It gives them an opportunity to learn about it and to kind of be hands-on with things.
I'm just excited to see if there's a difference in taste and finally get the reward to eat your own plants that you've been growing.
Today we are gathering our program's participants from all our regional sites in one space. This is an opportunity for our students from all the different sites to get together and connect and learn and bond with one another. Part of the programming that they do is actively learning how to grow crops and plants, and they've been able to do that throughout the season, and they've been able to bring a portion of those harvests here. And through this, they're also going to have the opportunity not only to showcase their harvest, but also to make a meal out of their harvest, to be able to see the full circle value of growing and planting.
I thought it might be a good idea to show you guys the kind of work that it goes into making a salad, and also just how easy it is to make your own homemade dressing, okay?
It teaches me a lot of things about food processing and a lot of things to help me grow in the future if I want to start agriculture and start farming.
So we've been learning a lot of new things about like nutritional foods. We're learning when to plant the plants, so we know like we actually have enough time to harvest them, so we're not late or we're not too early on them so they rot or anything.
I've enjoyed it. My friends are here, and we've learned a lot of things about planting, mistakes that I've made before when planting. So learning made it easier when I wanted to plant at home.
We grew glass corn, peas, basil.
We have summer savory, like different types of herbs. We have cucumbers, zucchini,
carrots, beetroot, cherry tomatoes. beans. We have so many beans.
Sunflowers, sweet potatoes, pumpkins.
There's too many beans.
It honestly warms my heart and brings joy and fulfillment in the work that we're doing when you actively see students from the beginning of the program that had no idea, no interest within the understanding of agriculture come to a full circle point where they're excited, they're enthusiastic about it and considering careers within the field. It brings meaning to the work that we're doing, and so I'm very excited and can't wait for all that we have in store.
It makes me feel happy that other Black people are taking part of this so they can start taking agriculture seriously and so they could learn more about this too.
Anybody can farm, right? If you're a young kid and you want to get into this type of stuff, trust me, there's a lot of people that can help you with this stuff. It's really fun, it's really awesome once you get into it, and it's worth your while.
Coming up, a new round of ceasefire talks begin as Gaza health officials say the number of people killed has now passed 40,000. And ambulance simulator. College students in Fort McMurray get access to a new hands-on training tool. There's a view from our harbor cam tonight. Ryan Snoddon back with your full weather forecast right after this short break. All right, your full weather forecast now, and it's kind of been rinse and repeat for some folks when it comes to these downpours that we've been seeing in the province.
2 days in a row, Cape Breton has really been hit with these heavy downpours, lightning, thunder, and for the most part, that's been the main concerns is the heavy downpours, but reports of some localized hail with some of these cells as well. Let's have a look at this webcam shot from, this was about an hour ago, capturing at Iona, capturing not only the sun glistening on the water, but in the distance you can see a couple of heavier downpours tracking through. Now, in terms of the warnings and watches in place right now, severe thunderstorm watches in yellow and a warning now in place for Pictou County, and that is because of these heavy downpours tracking not really tracking anywhere. That's the problem, is they're really stationary. And that's the cell there. You can see it's been kind of wandering a bit further south, but that is bringing a lot of rain. So if you're in Glencoe or Bridgeville or Shepherd's Junction, across to Rocky Mountain, Caledonia, these areas are Blue Mountain, all getting hit with some very heavy rain. And again, that's a couple of big highways there. The 347, the 343, I believe, is in there as well. And so if you're traveling on these routes between New Glasgow and the South Shore, it's really going to be problematic. Lots of ponding on the roads and hydroplaning. We'll be watching that over the next little bit. That's really the main area of concern here over in the short term. But we are still tracking some of these other cells as well. So no question about it. Let's zoom over to Cape Breton and show you. Thankfully, this area was hit hard yesterday as well, Victoria County, but these heavy rains are starting to fade away. You can see the yellow is kind of disappearing on the radar returns, and so that's some good news there. Now, we're going to zoom all the way back to the west and, of course, make mention of these showers. And, of course, all eyes on Yarmouth this evening with the big concert and festival happening there. Thankfully, it looks like these are going to be stationary and kind of remain inland. And so not expecting Yarmouth to see anything, at least over the next little bit. We're hoping that that's going to continue to be the case. This is the area, again, we're going to be watching through the hour. So heads up on that. Now, area of high pressure, for the most part, dominating, but we just have these pop-up showers and storms in this cooler pocket of air, which is overhead. So that's going to keep things active tonight. 13 to 15 degrees for overnight lows for the most part. Yarmouth will drop to around 16 for an overnight low. And you can see those showers will fizzle away by midnight. Fog patches, some cloud, a bit dominant, low-level cloud, a bit dominant to start the day tomorrow. Shower chances from Halifax to Truro and east of that line tomorrow is going to be our greatest risk. Can't rule out an isolated shower popping up in the west for inland areas, but it's a very isolated risk indeed. The greatest risk will again be Cape Breton and the eastern parts of the mainland tomorrow. The winds are going to be light. We'll see those sea breezes come in, pop things up and make things active into the afternoon, and even as early as say mid to late morning, we'll be keeping our eye on the sky. And again, a very isolated risk here as well, but didn't put it on the icons, but verbally mentioning it. Now for Saturday, beautiful day. Sun and cloud, light winds. We're going to be seeing temperatures as warm as 26, 27 away from the light west to southwest onshore winds. And you can see here as we move through the timeline, that high pressure area is just going to dominate. Now Sunday we'll see some increasing clouds as noted here by the model, but that's high level cloud. And we should see some breaks into the afternoon. There's Ernesto. In case you're just joining us, really the one thing we're still waiting to figure out, these arrows here, this is the jet stream. Right? The very upper level winds where the weather systems, the highway they travel on. So we're waiting for the timing of this trough in the jet stream to come over to the east throughout the weekend, because that is going to hook up to Ernesto and help to direct that storm off to the north and east. And it's those upper level winds that are going to help to usher it away from the Maritimes. Newfoundland looking more likely to see some direct impacts, but again, that latest hurricane track southeast of Sable, but the cone of uncertainty still within reach of Cape Breton. So we're keeping you posted on that. Either way, from that trough itself, Tom, we are expecting to see some showers into the mix Monday, Tuesday, and maybe some of those outer rain bands from Ernesto, like I said earlier, edging into the province on Monday. So we'll be keeping you posted on that.
We'd be okay with that, that's for sure. Okay, Ryan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Up next, I'll talk with a Dalhousie University researcher who says there are big problems with the temporary foreign workers program here in Nova Scotia. She is our Newsmaker interview. Stay with us. You are watching CBC Nova Scotia News. A recent United Nations report called Canada's temporary foreign worker program a, quote, breeding ground for modern slavery. It comes as the federal government looks at reforming the program. Raluca Béchon is an associate professor at the School of Social Work at Dalhousie University and has researched this issue in Nova Scotia. I'm wondering, first of all, the temporary foreign worker program, as we've been hearing, being described as a breeding ground for modern slavery. What do you make of that claim in this part of the country?
Well, I think that claim does not come to us as a research team as a surprise. We have just wrapped up close to a 4-year study that looked at the occupational and housing conditions of migrant workers in the Maritimes. So we have done a report for PEI, one for New Brunswick, and one for Nova Scotia. And it was actually another one for PEI that came out in June. And, I think in any employment scheme in which you have a worker whose contract is tied with their employer is going to sort of create this breeding ground for exploitation.
And what were one of the biggest concerns that you came across in that research?
Well, for Nova Scotia, so first of all, we have to differentiate between the workers that are coming in the seasonal agricultural worker program and those that are coming in through the low wage stream of the program. So the low wage stream people are generally employed in the seafood processing sector. And those coming under the seasonal agricultural worker program, this is a program that's administered on a bilateral agreement between Canada and certain Caribbean countries and Latin American countries. So, for instance, most of the people that we interview were from Mexico. So the seasonal agricultural worker program is administered on a bilateral agreement between Canada and Mexico. And we're not trying to say that this program is much better, because there's still a lot of issues with it. But I think by far the worst conditions are within the seafood processing plants. And I think for the agricultural workers, the main issue, especially here in Nova Scotia, is that there are certain regulations that are outlined by the federal program, but they're not necessarily implemented when it comes to the employer. So, for instance, just to give you an example, housing was a very big issue in Nova Scotia. So workers were saying that the housing stock is inadequate, and they also reported a lot of overcrowding. However, the federal guidelines of the seasonal agricultural worker program state that employers need to provide housing that abide by the 2 people per room occupancy guidelines. So the rules are there, but basically they're not being implemented.
Okay, so the rules not being enforced the way they should be. These examples of overcrowding, okay, anecdotally, what can you tell us about what kind of conditions you were learning about?
Well, there were, close to 15 to 20 people in a house, and then there were a lot of wear and tear. So, someone, for instance, fell because there was no lighting on the hallway and stuff like that. If we look at the low wage stream of the program, so for instance, in the seafood processing sector in New Brunswick, because their housing is actually less regulated by the federal government, overcrowding was huge, and also the rents were very, very high. In New Brunswick, I think we even had one person sleeping on the floor. So clearly not conditions that are normal for 21st century.
And are you suggesting that this is across the board, or are there successfully implemented portions of this program, and then Nova Scotia benefiting from it?
Well, I think these issues happen everywhere. I mean, this research is a bit perhaps more recent for the Maritimes, but if you look at the larger provinces, Ontario, Quebec, British Columbia, I mean, everything that's written in this report have been stated for several years, right? By community organizers, by advocates, by academics. There has been so much research. So, yes, these are not isolated events, although our samples are not representatives, right? So we have only spoke with 15 people in each province, so we don't claim that our samples are representatives. But I think the fact that these situations end up showing the same thing from Ontario to BC to Quebec, Nova Scotia to New Brunswick, I think it's showing that these issues are they're not unique.
Are you pleased to hear that Ottawa is looking at making changes to the program?
Well, depending on the changes, right? So I think in May, Ottawa basically said that, okay, we're going to reduce the number of the program. But the issue is not necessarily that the issue is not necessarily the numbers per se. The issue is that workers are tied to their employer. So even in the UN report, right, the rapporteur is saying that actually the human rights issues are created by the current Canadian temporary migration framework. Okay, so it's a problem of design. And I think Ottawa is making changes right now simply because, in terms of, let's say, reducing numbers, simply because the labor shortages in Canada are just not as high.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Bichon, we'll have to leave it there. I appreciate you drawing attention to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Coming up, taking the stage, Taylor Swift performs in London with extra security after a foiled terror attack canceled her shows in Vienna. Welcome back. A new round of talks aimed at bringing a ceasefire to the war in Gaza and the return of Israeli hostages continue. Representatives from the U.S., Israel, Egypt, and Qatar are meeting. However, Hamas is not directly taking part. Journalist Sarah Coates has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Hamas earlier came out to say that it's not going to negotiate just to negotiate, also accusing the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of adding new conditions. Now, Netanyahu's office swiftly replied to that, saying that these are actually necessary clarifications. Now, one of the main sticking points that we've been seeing time and time again, of course, is the end to the war. Benjamin Netanyahu says there will be no end to the war until Hamas is completely defeated and it poses no threat once again to Israel. But certainly coming at a very, very critical time here in the region amid a time of heightened tension, not just between Israel and Hamas, but of course between Israel and Hezbollah and also Israel and Iran.
Both sides need
to show compromise, both sides need to show some leadership here. We are now talking about the implementing details of the deal itself, the smaller gaps that we absolutely believe can be narrowed in terms of how the deal is executed. It's not about a debate in Doha today about the deal itself, the structure of it. It's now about implementing it.
Now, with diplomacy in overdrive, one of Biden's top envoys, Amos Hochstein, he is here in the region. He's been in Tel Aviv, also in Beirut, really trying to calm tensions, hoping that this ceasefire may actually bring down this very dangerous threat in the Middle East.
There is no more time to waste, and there's no more valid excuses from any party for any further delay. The deal would also help enable a diplomatic resolution here in Lebanon, and that would prevent an outbreak of a wider war.
But certainly what we've been seeing on the ground on Thursday is an escalation of rocket fire, drone fire between Israel and also Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, with large fires breaking out in northern Israel, the result of many rockets and drones being sent over, with people in these northern areas told to stay very, very close to shelter. In Tel Aviv, Sarah Coates reporting for CBC News.
Global pop sensation Taylor Swift kicks off 5 days of concerts at London's Wembley Stadium starting tonight. They are the first shows since all of her dates in Austria were cancelled because of a foiled terror plot. And as Kayla Hounsell shows us, security is tight.
Take the Clarabelle one. That was horrible. Oh my gosh. I love it. Thank you so much.
They've waited a long time for this night, one some worried might not happen at all. This father-daughter duo came from Nova Scotia.
We're here to see Taylor Swift in London.
Swift's London show is the first since all 3 of her Austria shows were cancelled last week. Authorities say they foiled a plot to launch an ISIS-inspired attack outside the venue in Vienna.
It made me very, very scared, and I just felt so bad for all the Vienna Swifties.
Welcome to the Eras Tour. Swift's Era Tour is already the highest grossing of all time. In London, the excitement cannot be overstated, but for some, it is tempered.
I think it's definitely scary to some extent, but I feel like we're protected well enough.
Police and security officials here at Wembley Stadium are certainly on high alert, but experts say that's always the case when it comes to major events.
It's a very well practiced complex that hosts some of the highest profile events that we ever hold in this country, and you would expect, quite rightly, for there to be a gold standard of security wrapped around that, and there is.
This former counter-terrorism coordinator says the country has learned some hard lessons.
Oh my God.
22 people were killed in a terror attack at a concert in Manchester in 2017. Since then, counter-terrorism training has become mandatory for licensed security officials. Swift's concerts often draw tens of thousands of people who don't have tickets outside arenas. For security reasons, that's been banned at Wembley Stadium. Swift's tour will head to Toronto for 6 sold-out shows next, concluding in Vancouver in December.
He just got traded this one.
I got traded this one. This is awesome.
It has some really cool London jewels.
These Canadians say they're already on the hunt for more tickets to see Swift at home. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, London.
Home sales in Canada dipped slightly last month despite interest rate cuts, and the average price is down from a year ago. That's according to the latest report from the Canadian Real Estate Association. Sales were down by 0.7% from June, while listings were up almost 1%. The national average home price was down 0.2% from a year earlier. July's small pullback comes despite the second interest rate cut by the Bank of Canada. Experts say the cuts haven't yet translated into a notable bump in sales. Additional rate cuts and pent-up demand are expected to rekindle the housing market next year. A college in Fort McMurray has been investing in new immersive technologies it can use in its teaching. It recently procured an ambulance simulator and upgraded its haul truck simulators to help understand what it's like to drive massive rigs. Dennis Covden has more.
Keanu College has been investing in new immersive technologies it can use in its teaching to keep up with the needs of various industries and to make learning experience more hands-on for its students. It recently procured an ambulance simulator which imitates what it's like to drive and perform medical procedures in a real ambulance. The simulator shakes and vibrates, imitating the bumps in the road.
It does react. All the windows react appropriately, so even the person in the back is going to see motion, they're going to feel motion, so it'll be quite realistic.
The simulator tells the student driver what they have to do.
A man has suffered a heart attack. Please go to the scene immediately. Turn left.
Dagan says the simulator will give students an extra opportunity to learn before they have to do it for real.
The safety aspect, the realism aspect of it, and just giving that so that when the students approach their practicums, they actually have a true feel of what it is to actually, what it's like to work around an actual unit.
Earlier this year, the college opened an esports arena. It's not all for entertainment.
We offer a esports concentration within the business administration program. It covers all the core concepts and lessons that you'd expect with a business administration course, but it takes a spin to make it more coordinated through esports and the gaming industry.
In the near future, for sure, we'll have definitely a broadcasting studio just to commentate for the county esports.
The college also has haul truck simulators, which use maps of the actual mining sites in the Wood Buffalo region. They're designed to help students get used to operating an enormous vehicle. Can I do it without crashing? No.
These simulators are from 10 to about 5 years old. They're beyond their life cycle with the hardware. So what we've done is had to get upgrades regularly, and we have some new upgrades coming again.
The new hardware has already arrived at Keanu and is waiting to be installed. But even the older version gives some idea how to drive these wheeled monsters. Dennis Cofton, CBC News, Fort McMurray.
People who subscribe to podcasts, music, and other content from the online platform Patreon could be looking at a stiff price increase. Apple plans to start enforcing a significant fee for purchases made on iOS devices. Patreon is recommending content creators pass that expense on to subscribers. The CBC's Anis Haderi reports.
Tech giant Apple wants a share of the monthly fees subscribers pay to content creators using an app called Patreon. Apple's demand, 30%.
I might have a bunch of people who are coming to me through the Apple app, which means I'll have to raise my rates to be able to compensate for that difference, because now Apple's going to be taking a cut of that Patreon.
The fee applies to in-app purchases as of November 4th. Patreon says payments for existing memberships aren't affected. Podcasters like Craig Baird aren't sure how much it'll hurt yet.
It kind of feels like the Apple cost is just being transferred right to me rather than Patreon taking any kind of part of that or trying to compensate for it.
If you don't have an iPhone, you don't have the App Store.
The 30% figure isn't new, applying to most revenue from other apps for years. It's unclear what changed for Patreon, which avoided it. Apple didn't respond to requests for comment, but Apple won recent legal challenges to the fee, and the iPhone market is huge. So experts say companies have to go along with it.
App developers, software companies, platforms like Patreon live in fear that they have to stay on the right side of Apple's line or risk having their business decimated.
We don't have any other choice. App developers don't have any other choice other than to sort of pay these taxes, as you might call them, to the platform owners.
The fee can be avoided if users pay on a computer or Android device. But in a statement, Patreon told CBC News it's not permitted to advise fans away from purchasing within the iOS app. And the company is advising its users to increase their rates.
Norman McLaren.
In the end, creators will have to decide on their own if they want to eat the loss or raise prices. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
Canada's main stock index made gains today in a broad-based rally, while U.S. markets also soared higher. Here's a look at the numbers. All right, we're here to wrap things up, and just curious how folks are getting along in Caledonia and those kinds of places where we're seeing those thunder showers.
Sheep Herders Junction is in Glencarry Station. That area, Upper Burnside, is really getting thumped now with some heavy rain. That has been a stationary cell that's been raining itself out. You definitely don't travel when it's raining that heavily because localized flooding can occur in a hurry. Remember, turn around, don't drown. And also looking at some of those cells that are still in and around the Yarmouth area, so much going on there tonight. The sea breeze seems to be keeping the rain away from the downtown.
The Acadian Congress folks will be happy about that.
Yeah, staying inland, and so our fingers are crossed for that. Have a look at our viewer picture of the day and zooming in on Halifax, and can tell you exactly where this picture was taken based on Ross's great photo.
That is beautiful. Look at that.
Isn't it? HMCS Ville de Quebec with a beautiful rainbow behind it. And thanks to Ross for sharing Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. So those downpours again continuing for the next few hours, and then wrapping up, but we'll do it all again tomorrow. The greatest risk is for central and eastern areas again tomorrow, including Cape Breton tomorrow, beginning mid to late morning, but more so throughout the afternoon. Saturday looking like a great day. We're going to be seeing sun and cloud and a nice day shaping up for Sunday as well. So there are those storms fizzling out tonight. So that's some good news there. An update in case you're just joining us on Ernesto, and again, that National Hurricane Center track looking like it's far to the southeast, but again, important to remember, Tom, this is going to be a big storm. Some of those outer rain bands may still be close enough to kind of tuck into Nova Scotia. Most concerned right now about the pounding surf and the potential for dangerous rip currents, especially if you're thinking about heading to the beach.
Yeah, still lots to watch for there. Okay, thanks, Ryan. Well, not all dogs love the water, but some were bred for daring aquatic missions, and in Ottawa, a local group takes their canines to the water a few times a week to train in rescue simulations.
She has to go actually under the raft to get the ball.
So we just wait?
Yeah.
And like, what's it like when a 120-pound dog comes? Oh my favorite!
Sorry. Here. All right, go on. Go under.
Well, that's what it's like. Dog owners have been bringing their furry friends to the Ottawa River to practice various scenarios. The Newfoundland dogs and one Labrador retriever swim out to haul boats and their owners back to shore.
There are 3 different training levels the dogs can achieve. The owners say it's a way for the dogs to reconnect with their genetic roots and a great opportunity to socialize.
It's a dog's life.
Yeah.
That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.